So you have a Dyson V8 and the battery goes bad. OEM units are expensive and out of stock. Do you risk it and purchase a replacement battery from Amazon? Can they really be any good? Today we take a look at 4 of the most popular replacement battery packs to determine which one is best. Let's take a look. We've done a fair amount of battery pack teardowns for cordless Dysons and other brands here on this channel. It all culminated a few months back with our ultimate Amazon replacement V6 battery comparison. Now it's time to look at the best battery pack for its big brother, the Dyson V8. Which battery pack will win? Well, it may surprise you. Before getting started, I want to point out that I'm not being paid to review any of these batteries. These were purchased by me with my own money for the purposes of this video. I have no financial interest in your choice, and the link to Amazon is not an affiliate link. Just like with all other Dyson models, Amazon is completely jam-packed with weird, off-brand replacement battery packs for the V8. We certainly don't have enough time or money to test every one of these, so I picked 4 units that I thought were good options. I looked at the best sellers, cheap models, and high-end units to determine what to compare. As a note, the vacuum was a Dyson refurbished V8 that had not been used since receipt. All tests were conducted on high speed, as that's the most demanding on the cells, and the test had the power nozzle attached. The V8 uses 425 watts on high, and at a voltage of 21.5 volts, the cells used need to be rated for a minimum of 20 amps to operate safely. As a control, we ran the OEM battery to see how long it lasted. It's rated at 2.8 amp hours and uses a Molicel 2700 35 amp cell that's privately labeled for Dyson. On high, it ran for 7 minutes 35 seconds and reached a maximum temperature of 121 degrees. The cost on these packs is $129 from Dyson, but that's assuming you can find it. The part's been on back order from Dyson for quite some time, which could leave you in the lurch if your battery dies while Dyson's out of stock. So let's take a look at the first replacement battery we bought, which is the First Power 5.0 amp hour battery pack. First Power was the winner of our V6 battery comparison, so we wanted to see if the performance extends to the V8 unit itself. Upon running, the pack ran for 8 minutes 23 seconds and reached a maximum temperature of 130 degrees. So it ran longer than the OEM pack with only a slight increase in temperature. Upon dissection, we find that the circuit board looks nice and clean. The soldering's professional, and I really like that they use nickel strips to connect to the board to the battery. Nickel's highly conductive, which results in lower resistance to the voltage and results in lower operating temperatures. Also of note is there's a temperature sensor underneath the board that sits between the 2 cells to work as a failsafe if the cells get too hot. More on that in a moment. The cell used is a SunPower 21700. The 21700 form factor is slightly larger than the Dyson OEM's 2700. As such, when tested, this cell had a capacity of 3.1 amp hours. So this is more than the OEM's 2.8, but nowhere near the advertised capacity of 5.0 amp hours. Of note as well is there's absolutely no documentation available for these cells even after a great deal of searching. As such, we have no idea what their amp rating is and whether they could safely handle the necessary 20 amps of draw. Next up, we'll look at the Duty 1 again as well. In the V6 comparison, the Duty 1 used very safe high amperage cells, but lost the comparison because the capacity of those cells was so low. We purchased this for $22.39, which makes it a veritable bargain and the second lowest price in this test. On high, the Duty 1 ran for 9 minutes and 44 seconds, which is more than a minute in excess of the First Power and 2 minutes more than OEM. After that run, the cell temperature raised to 130 degrees, identical to the First Power. When taken apart, the Duty 1 circuit boards look clean, but lower quality than the First Power. This is mostly due to the use of wiring in place of nickel strips. However, given the price difference between these and the First Power, it's understandable and not out of the norm. The circuit board itself looks clean and also has a temperature sensor. The cell used is a PORS 21700. I did find some information on this cell, and it appears to have a 10C rating, which is 20 amps, making it safe for use in this application, although the demand of the vacuum is at the upper end of this cell's capability. When tested, the cell tested at 3.3 amp hours, which is lower than the claimed 4.5 amp hours, but better than both the First Power and the OEM in real life. Third, we'll look at the TenHut. This is a new brand to us, but it has good reviews on Amazon and a large number of purchases. At $39.99, this would be considered a premium choice and the second highest price in this comparison. After testing the TenHut on high, we found that it ran for 9 minutes 6 seconds with a maximum temperature of 128 degrees, marginally lower than the First Power or Duty 1. Looking at the construction, it uses nickel strip connectors and the circuit board looks clean. No issues to point out here. It also has a temperature sensor. The cells themselves are identical to the First Power, being the SunPower 21700, but again, no documentation can be found regarding the cell specifications. It tests at 3.2 amp hours, which is the margin of error between First Power cells and those in the TenHut. Finally, we will look at the Surtop 3.5 amp hour battery. This was the lowest priced pack at $19.99 at the time of purchase. The runtime here was not impressive. 4 minutes, 49 seconds. Essentially, it was half of the other replacement batteries. However, in that short time, it still managed to get to 129 degrees. What that tells us is the temperature rose quickly. At this point, I'm starting to suspect that this pack was using a smaller 18650 cell rather than the more appropriate 2700 or 21700. Dissection reveals a circuit board using nickel connectors, which is interesting given the low price point. In addition, it uses the temperature sensor as well, so there are no real warning bells here, at least until we get to the cells. The cells were exactly as I suspected, 18650 cells in a cardboard wrapper to make up the additional space. This explained the short run time, either due to capacity or heat. The cells themselves were tracked down as Ningbo 2.0 amp hour cells. The only documentation I could find on these was from a Russian website, so the information's a little sparse to say the least. There's no way to know whether these meet the 20 amp requirement of the V8, but given the capacity, I would guess not. These tested at 2.0 amp hours as well, reinforcing that these are indeed the Ningbo units. So what does this all mean? Well, first off, let's talk about the heat and temperature sensors. These have an artificial heat sealing, which will help avoid damage to the cells or potential thermal runaway. This is a good thing across the board. I also believe this is why we saw such consistent temperatures at the maximum. What this says to me is that the batteries may not have fully discharged on some of the units, but rather cut off when they got too hot, thus the artificial sealing that I mentioned. Second, we can see that like all replacement Dyson batteries tested to this point, they vastly inflate their actual capacity. That being said, the fact that 3 of these used marginally larger 21700 cells versus the OEM 2700 allows them to beat the runtime despite the dishonesty. Third, you need to be careful with ultra-budget battery packs. It's way too easy for them to substitute underrated 18650 cells in place of 21700s. The temperature sensor keeps these cells from becoming dangerous, but it'll result in a quick heat up, quick thermal cutoff at lower motor speeds, and because heat kills cells, most likely a shorter battery life due to heat and discharge damage. This is extremely deceptive and not acceptable, so the Surtop is the first to be disqualified from consideration. I would not purchase this unit. The TenHut and the First Power are very similar in terms of runtime, construction, and identical cells. They're both high priced, but between the two batteries, I would pass on the First Power and get the TenHut. You're essentially getting the same battery for $5 less. I don't think either of these are bad options, but I don't like the use of cells for which there's no specifications. Because of this, neither of these would be my first choice because I cannot vouch for the cells. That leaves the Duty 1. Despite not using nickel strips and using cheaper wire in its place, I'm going to name this the winner. The construction is not unusual or unsafe, so while it would be nice to have the nickel strips, it's not absolutely necessary. The battery pack has the longest run time at almost 10 minutes and the highest tested capacity of the cells at 3.3 amp hours. While outperforming all the others, this pack also is the second lowest priced at $22.39 at the time of purchase, which is an absolute bargain. One caveat I will add is that I'm not an electrical engineer. I can't say outright that any of these packs are 100% safe or don't have fatal design flaws in them. I can only operate off of what I observed, which is that the Duty 1 is the best performing at the lowest price without any major red flags. However, if you want the ultimate in performance and safety, the OEM battery may be worth the expense to you. I hope this helps with your choice of a replacement Dyson V8 battery. If you found this helpful, give us a like. If you have any questions or experience you would like to share, sound off in the comments. We love to hear from folks and try to respond to every comment. If you'd like information on the best vacuum for your home, visit us at www.thehouseofvax.com. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.